Good night, good night. Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 550. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is 10:19 p.m. on the 2nd of the 2nd. Tutu. Woo. I am but a child on the inside. The fecal jokes, you know, you never really grow out of them. Tutu of 2026, the year of our Lord. Welcome. Once you're on the inside, make sure you hit that like button, double tap the screen out there on Instagram, hit out there on TikTok, hit the like button on Instagram, on Facebook, share the video wherever you see it, wherever you can. Tell every single person, you know, hey, this is some good stuff. Go follow Nathan Springer. Let's look at the lives together. People from all quarters of society look at the lives. It's an interesting place to be, interesting discussion to have. If you want to discuss, feel free to drop that comment. I do look at the comments, whether they are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok, but a lot of the conversation does occur on TikTok if you are looking for where a lot of the replies are happening. All right, let's see. We're looking at the stories today. What's in the news? What's lighting up the news? And what I see is a lot from the Prime Minister doubling down on her intent to bring terror to the criminals, as she says it. And her threat really of that is basically more states of emergency, where the money they took from the fund that this, I don't know, sir. Her threat is basically more states of emergencies on the country, and we'll see what some people think of that, the legal ramifications of such. And where that goes. The protest on the commissioner, they want the commissioner gone. They want him gone. They want also Mr. Homelander, they want him gone too, because of some of the statements they have made, the way they have handled the whole police shooting of the couple, one crippled, one dead. They're asking about the body cams also. We're hearing there are less than 200 working body cams in the whole TTPS. What happened to all the working body cams? Who knows? Who cares? Apparently nobody does. We're seeing that the 8 officers from the triple killing in Morva, they're headed to court. We'll see where that goes. Also, a soldier held inside of a home invasion. And these cases with soldiers, with police, I think anytime there's a criminal case where an officer of the law pops up, it makes the idea of extending SOEs and extending ZUSUs, etc. It makes all of that, it throws a further shade over all of that each time you see that. What do you think about Millennium movie? Good night. I have not seen the Millennium movie, and somehow I find that isn't really made for me. Melania, my apologies. I think that's not made for me. I'm not the target audience for the Melania movie, so it's fine. Jail them police. If it was me, jail I was going. Yes, jailing the police is all easy to say, but it's not as easy to get it done, because the police are responsible for investigating and gathering evidence, even against the police. And when the police have that kind of insular thinking, as we saw with the commissioner stood by his officers, and the police welfare group, all their union-like people, they stood by the officers too. So when you have that kind of insularity inside of the police, it becomes hard to expect them to really do a clean investigation of each other. I watch it. It was good, honestly. I'm glad for you, bro. I'm glad for you. Justice Frank said record all interactions with the police, and I think Justice Frank was very correct in how he said that. Use cell phones and CCTV, he was saying, and he said that in relation to a case that a regiment officer just won against the police. He was saying that. So I think he was very correct. And then on top of that, we see a lot of the people that were held during the SOE are just released now. Very likely 117 of them were released smoothly. Very likely 117 of them may be able to sue the government soon. And bear in mind, when you say sue the government, they're not personally suing Mrs. Prasad Bisas the mic. Yeah, they're not personally suing Mrs. Prasad Visasa and taking money out of her pocket. No, they're suing the state, which is us. Our tax-paying money will very likely go to paying back these people that were taken for 117 days and face no charges. I think to some extent, if you were taken, not 117 days, sorry. If you were taken for multiple days for a period of time, no charges were sent, and you were just taken and held there, I think you have just cause to sue the people. That's nearly like kidnapping. You used your power inside of the SOE to take me hostage and have nothing to charge me with, just to hold me hostage for a period of time. That's basically kidnapping. I saw the lady who was held for the post she made telling the Venezuelans where to find the prime minister. She was released without charge. I think she should sue the government. I think that is reprehensible. What they did there was basically throw a damper on free speech, and they had nothing to actually charge the woman with. She was punished for what very likely may have been legal free speech. She was punished for it. She was punished for something that is not a crime in Trinidad and Tobago. Tell me that's not authoritarian. I don't think that Mrs. Prasad Visasa was put under any more risk by the post that the lady made. There was no actual real world risk increase because of the post that she made. That post was just insulting, and it was just ginning up the general public sentiment against the prime minister, and they didn't like that. What do you think about all the job loss since they came into power? Do you think in next term coming? No, I don't think in next term is coming, but it nearly seems like the present administration doesn't care for a next term. The job losses, to some extent, I agree with a lot of the release of the workers from being employed by the government. I think our government employs too many people. But the irony of it all is a lot of the money they're attempting to save and cut from different sectors, making it seem like they're interested in getting the government to run efficiently. They're using a lot of that money to further pay for more goodies from the government, just in another direction. Do they even care about the next term? No, I don't think they do, at least not yet. At least not yet. Yes, the government is looking to tax the carnival artists too. The government wants money. That seems quite clear. And in the pursuit of money, it's very likely going to affect every single citizen. TCL, the cement company, is looking to raise their price, which may have a knock-on effect on nearly the entire construction sector. We'll see how that all goes. I think constitutional reform is incoming to force a second term. Okay, do you think this old Westminster system is killing us? I think it's protecting corruption. I am not against another system than the Westminster, but the question is which? And which other system is there that will negate corruption to the desired amount? Corruption, I think, in my opinion, is more of a human condition kind of problem. And I'm not sure what you're going to do to change that human condition. Good night, Righteous Rebel. Welcome, welcome, welcome over there on Instagram. Thank you for jumping in. Yeah. So I don't know what other political system you're going to put in place to make it that this system works. I'm not sure what you're going to do there. Constitutional reform, I am not against it, but what exactly are the reformations we're talking about here? What do we want to change? What do we think is going to be made better by what we do? Follow Wales and threaten to jail ministers if they lie. I don't mind jailing ministers, but there's a sting in the tail. If a government comes in and jails the last administration's ministers, understand that almost surely, should that administration return to power the next time, they're going to look to find cause to jail the previous administration. And it becomes a cycle that basically doesn't end. And what it may in fact do is just increase the polarization inside of the country. So there are arguments to be made that even in the face of corruption and illegal action, you want to go at jailing politicians and previous government ministers. You want to be very careful how you head into that, because there's a high chance that you could blow up the whole thing. So you want to be very careful how you head into that. Minister of Finance begged TCL not to raise the price, but they got the middle finger with the letter. Well, the Minister of Finance seems like his strategy for inflation is asking companies not to do it. Please don't raise the prices. Okay. And we have the bar owners, etc. Many of them seem like they're closing with that. Let's see if we can jump into some of these stories. What do you think about a one-party system? That sounds like a recipe for disaster. So, good evening, Thean. So, we're having problems with the two parties and being abused by the two because they know they only have each other to choose from. Do you think making even less choice in that would benefit? Like, people watch China and admire certain things. Our Homeland Security Minister, apparently, he is impressed by how China handles certain security measures. But when last have you seen opposition say anything in China? And think about that for a moment. Do you think Michaela Pandey will be a good PM? I think Michaela Pandey thinks that she will be a good PM. A fundamental change in the mentality of Trinbagonians is definitely needed. Throughout the two, go with Michaela, risk it for the biscuit. I don't know. And it's not one person. It's not like we have the American system where you're electing an executive leader, but also you can elect the Senate and the Congress separately, etc. So it's not just about Michaela. It's who would her team be? Who would she use to form the government that she wants to form? It's not just her who will be there. Let's jump into some of these stories, eh? PM, I will make criminals' lives hell. I think Lair says, I think Kazel is a very educated leader. You're trolling, right? Thean says, I don't care at this point who her team is. The leader could be Elmo. Time for change. Thean, personally, I despise that style of thinking. That style of thinking is the style of thinking that comes right before disaster. It's we're in a car and somebody fart. Somebody fart in the car. And you're saying, here's what, best we jump out the car. We're going at 100 kilometers per hour. Somebody fart in the car, we don't like how it's all going. Best we jump out the car. Who knows? It must be better than what's inside the car. No, it could actually be a lot worse. The idea that, you know, things aren't going good now, so what the hell? Let me just do anything. Yeah. That's a horrible plan. That's how you end up like France, beheading everybody and end up walking straight into the arms of a short wannabe emperor. That's how you end up like that. That's how you end up like Haiti with a man named Barbecue in charge of running your country's security with himself and his gang. That's immature, childish thinking. That's immature, childish thinking. I am not going to just do anybody else because, oh gosh, things going bad. No, you have to convince me individually. Okay, you may in fact be better, but convince me. I'm not just going to do that for the hell of it. So here's how I could see, just for the benefit of it, Michaela Panley. Not necessarily choosing blindly for her to be the prime minister, but it could be chosen blindly for someone, whether it be her or someone from her party, to please enter the parliament. And let's get some third voices inside of the parliament. Make the decision making when it comes to choosing laws a bit more complicated. You see, I think people forget the Westminster system and how it's supposed to function. I know this is idealism here, but it's supposed to be that each member of parliament is basically an independent thinker that represents the views of his or her constituency. So the member of parliament for Couva North is not supposed to go to parliament to toe the line and have the view of the UNC. They're supposed to go to parliament and have the view and toe the line of the people of Couva North. And the parliament is supposed to be, as it were, a discussion between the people of Couva North with the people of Couva South and the people of Laventille West and the people of Diego Martin Central, and all of those people, their representatives, meet in a singular building and discuss the affairs of the country. Unfortunately, because of the party-style politics that we have, our members of parliament don't represent their constituencies, they represent their party. So what I want, if I'm talking idealistically here, yes, I am fully aware that you can't just wave a wand and things happen like that. But if we're talking idealistically, as in throughout the two parties and bring in one other. But Theon, you do understand throughout the two parties and magically bringing a third party is an idealistic view also. So if we're dealing with it idealistically, I would like the system to function as intended, with people more loyal to their constituents than their parties. Now, it's idealistic to have that view, but how I think you could go about attempting to operationalize something like that, at least move in the direction of that, is as much as possible choose third parties in constituencies where they might win. I think, should Michaela win Couva North, that's a very slim likelihood, but should it be possible, I think that in and of itself would have a change in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago. To some extent, Tobago is seeing some of that, because now Tobago has bargaining chips with the present government. It will be very interesting to see when the Tobago leadership and the Trinidad and Tobago central government, when both of them have disagreements. Now it will be very interesting to see how that all goes, because Tobago has the bargaining chips. You need the Tobago MPs' votes to give you the special majority that you want. So now you have to do things that the Tobagonians approve of, because they aren't loyal to your party, they are loyal to Tobago. And that should be the case for every constituency. If you were able to get a third party inside of Bonnet, then it's understood that you don't just write off, well, all the PNM voters going, all the PNM MPs going to go this way, so we're not even bothering with that. You have someone to discuss and change their mind. Now they can vote with you, they can vote with the PNM, they can propose things on their own. So I'm not wishing for the magic of a third party magically taking governance, because I think that's nearly impossible. I will, if we're wishing for magic, my magic is smaller. Just let a third party win one constituency. That's what annoyed me, and I've said this numerous times. If you're in my live long enough, you would have heard me say this before. That's what really annoyed me about the corps. The Congress of the People. The Congress of the People was well in line to do that. Should the Congress of the People have had stayed independent out of the UNC grip for the 2010 election, I think they would have gotten a couple seats. They already crossed the barrier of not losing their deposits in all the seats they contested. A third party should work the local government and then go for the general. Cops should have stayed independent, correct? Yeah, you see, even that, Michael Modesto, our local government election also is supposed to function differently. But again, because of the party politics that Trinidad and Tobago subscribes to, our local government election is the same partisan trip. Ideally, you shouldn't even bother what the party of your local government representative is. You should only be bothered if this person is someone that really works within our local district. That should be your only concern. I think ideally they should be able to remove the party signal from local government election. Ideally. But unfortunately, it's the same. You vote for your tribal party, and that's what goes local. Horrible stuff. That's not how it's intended to function. Barely, Chris, barely. PM, I will make criminals' lives hell. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar has issued a warning to criminals and recently released detainees held under the preventive detention orders that she will call another state of emergency and raise hell if they unleash terror on law-abiding citizens. Both the Prime Minister and Minister of Homeland Security Roger Alexander delivered strong statements yesterday making it clear they would not allow a return to runaway crime and rampant violence, which they said marked the past decade under the former PNM administration. This sounds to me like an admittance or an admittal that you are incapable of handling the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. Who was I don't think the lady had a name. The nursery rhyme about the old lady who lived in a shoe. And she had so many children, she didn't know what to do. So she gave them all, was it porridge without any bread? Or supper without any bread or something like that. Then whipped them all soundly and sent them to bed. Our government is saying they are the old lady who lived in the shoe. And they don't know what to do. Their only option is remove the rights, lock down everything, and that's how we would handle crime. And if you have to threaten another SOE, you're saying that the previous SOE didn't work. And they were the ones saying an SOE isn't a crime fighting tool. It's not there just to keep the crime numbers and the crime statistics low. Are you saying that Trinidad and Tobago is in a place where it's impossible for the police to do their job within the bounds of the law that currently exists? Is that the admittance that we are getting here? The government is admitting that it is impossible for us to police this country within the laws that are currently on the books. And you know what's the strange thing then? You're the government, you have to bring further laws. I am curious. What is it that is required in the emergency measure that the police cannot do under regular scenarios? Because it seems to me the majority of what was done under the emergency measures was just to hold the people they think were the most dangerous for a period of time and then release them. Hold the people they think were dangerous and just release them. And here's the issue. You see, if the issue is that the police are corrupt, as many people say, and that the police aren't policing right, giving the police more power, how is that going to make them all of a sudden do the policing right? It's the same police service. Whether you call a state of emergency, whether you change the commissioner, whether you change the Minister of Homeland Security, whether you change the name of the Ministry of National Security, either way you cut it, flip it, twist it, and reverse it, it's the same police service. So if a major part of the problem was that the police service was always unable to handle the crime situation, for whatever reason, changing some words on paper wouldn't change that reality. Good night, Ting Ting. In a post on X yesterday, the Prime Minister said the full brunt of the law would be brought down on criminals. She vowed to protect citizens, declaring she would be brutal against those who brutalize the law-abiding. I want the gangs and those detainees released from prison to know that decent law-abiding citizens are fed up with your criminality, and I will have no hesitation in enacting another SOE. If you cannot behave yourselves, you will be returned straight to prison, and this time, your friends and family who aid your criminality will accompany you, she said. She continued, if criminals want to terrorize law-abiding citizens and their families, I will do everything legally possible to terrorize criminals and their families. It's time to tip the scales in this country toward law-abiding citizens. I will use every means within the law to make criminals and their friends and families' lives absolute hell. How? Okay. You could have a long state of emergency, hold them without charge for quite a period. Whenever it ends, they will be released and they very likely will win money from it. So how are you making their lives a living hell? How? What would you do to make their lives a living hell? Mixed reactions to PM's SOE warning. Constitutional Attorney Gregory Delzin has warned that behavior cannot be used as the legal basis for declaring another SOE, as debate intensifies over PM's threat to reimpose emergency powers if violence resumes. While Prasad Bisasa retains the constitutional authority to proclaim another SOE, Delzin said the law requires the existence of an emergency situation and does not permit declarations based solely on whether criminals behave themselves. Speaking to Guardian Media yesterday, Delzin said the Constitution does not prohibit successive SOEs, but insisted that each must be justified by fresh circumstances that endanger public safety. Here's the reality. I think, yes, Mrs. Prasad Bisasa can call other SOEs. You can call other SOEs. But you won't win what you're trying to win. Good night, Sugar Ras. And here's the reality. The longer and more regular we get those SOEs, the more comfortable the criminal elements would get functioning with it. I am sure, good night, Paul Duncan, I am sure this past year of SOE has already sent some update patches into the criminal networks and how they do what they do. I believe the SOE ended at the end of last month. I remember when the United States first started doing their drug action, and the government said they were clamping down on it, there were articles coming out saying that drugs are increasing in price around Trinidad and Tobago. The drug trade is feeling the pinch. Where have those articles gone? So what we under now, just pressure. And big words and bumping your gum to gangsters does nothing, you know. There's not a gangster in Trinidad, I think, that changed their mind about doing criminal action because Mrs. Prasad Bisasa told them she will make their lives hell. Because Mrs. Prasad Bisasa can do nothing on her own. She can do nothing on her own. She has to send out the officers to do it. They have no worry about Mrs. Prasad Bisasa because she is not going and jumping to any police jeep and come raiding anyone. She has to use the police as her arm to do all of those things. And if the criminal elements already know how to deal with the police, they have zero worry about what is going to happen. Yes, PM, you say you're going to make our lives a hell, but I know the senior superintendent for this district is in my boss pocket. I know that for a fact because I am one of the drivers who goes and drops off his monthly payment for him. Am I worried about what you say? Really? Am I? What are you going to do? Call another SOE? Write something on the paper and make them hold me in a building for a couple months? But my program is still going to run and I'm not worried. Freedom Law Chambers is on speed dial and I'm going to call them as soon as I get out and I'm going to win a couple 100,000 easy. And now that just goes right back into my criminal enterprise. So in fact, by holding me on an SOE, it's like assuring me you're giving me an investment. Locking me up in an SOE is like foreign investment for my criminal enterprise. I know it's a delayed investment. They lock me up for 4 months, okay, fine. But in a couple of years, Freedom and those fellas going to win my case, and that's an easy 300,000 every time. Because the reason they aren't locking me up outside of the SOE is because they don't have enough evidence to hold me and charge me. So how is it inside of the SOE they're going to magically get that evidence to now hold me and charge me? The only thing you can do magically now in the SOE is now you have the authority to hold me, but you still don't have magical authority to make up evidence to charge me. You still have to find that evidence. Just how you would have to find it outside of the SOE, you still have to find it inside of the SOE. And if you are incapable of finding it outside of the SOE, how are you going to find it inside that SOE? Pray tell. And the threat on people's families. Here's the thing. I think the image Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is going for, if you want people to really take you seriously, all the things that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is saying, she has to do it one time and then talk about it after. If you're going for that Bukele image, you have to actually do it. You can't talk about it, because talking about it does nothing to anyone. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the words. The words frighten nobody. Me not take intimidation. I mean, Cartel singing that song over a decade now. You ever see the threats that gangsters send for each other? Have you ever seen the threats that the gangsters send? They're always promising to kill each other and wipe out each other, whole family line and all of that. Your threat isn't new to them. That's not going to shake them up. And I am concerned that indeed the gang war, particularly in East Port of Spain, has kicked right back off. Today there was something like 3 shootings. One man murdered, they chased him from his car, running through Port of Spain. The SOE didn't stop that. The SOE didn't stop it. How are you going to stop that with the SOE? What is the SOE going to do? Criminologist Dr. Randy C. Prasad, though, said the Prime Minister's strong statements could still have a deterrent effect by signaling that the police retain the ability to detain those suspected of criminal activity and incarcerate gang leaders and members. It means that the SOE works through well-established mechanisms that we know, and if the threat of that exists, or could be brought back to bear, then the criminal elements will more than likely think twice. Bro, stop singing for your supper. You're a criminologist. You apparently spent money and went to school for years to study this. And you believe some youth man that throwing up number signs with his hand and facing bullets on the day-to-day, living in a galvanized shack somewhere. You think that, for one, he even reading Kamala's statement, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa's statement, you think he even read that? And then let's say, okay, somebody higher up in the gang read it. You think they read it and they are deterred by this? This really bothers them. They were planning a reprisal murder. But after hearing Mrs. Prasad Bisesa announce that she is going to make their lives hell, they changed their minds. Really? These guys are going out on a day-to-day basis, attempting to murder other men who want to murder them. Every murder that they do in the gang, they are aware that this increases their risk of also being murdered. Listen, how are you going to make their lives any more hell than the lives they already chose to live? They're already living in a hell. They chose a gangster criminal life where they hide and come out at night like roaches. And what are you going to do to make that life more hell? How? Here's how I would have believed if you were saying you're going to make the criminal lives hell in Trinidad and Tobago. You see that bust they made in the Carney Swamp where the police were afraid of the mosquitoes and all that nonsense? If you were seeing a bust like that every day, then I would have said, yeah, I think this government is serious about handling the crime situation on a daily basis. If you were seeing a bust like that on a daily basis, then I'd say, yeah, you're serious. And I'm not talking about walking 6 miles into a forested area to burn down 60 trees and say those 60 trees were worth $6 million. We're not talking about that. That has zero effect. That was only for Rasta Harry and Hirasta team. Dice was using that. That's not what is running the industry. The gangs that are up and down Trinidad and Tobago are not fueled by forests in Moruga. That's not what fuels them. So don't mamagay us by taking 60 police officers 6 miles into the forest and burn down 60 trees, call it $6 million, and then say, yeah, we're real working. No. You see that bust, the same as some people in the live call the fake bust. I am not saying it's a fake bust. Who knows? You see that same bust, that drug bust in the Carney Swamp, and then the busload of guns that were found under Erla. Remember that? The busload of guns in the Santa Cruz forest that nobody was found with. If you're finding that busload of arms and ammunition and the boatload of drugs, and you're doing that, not even, we don't say it daily, we don't even say it daily, on a weekly basis. If that was happening on a weekly basis, then you would have gotten me, yeah boy, whoo, she's serious about making their lives a living hell, boy. That's how you make those guys' lives a living hell, innit? Listen, if you start to catch all the drugs coming in, gangsters' lives will be a living hell already. Because what's going to happen is somebody going to take something on consignment and say, when I sell it, I'm going to pay you. And then the police are going to take it. So they won't get it to be able to sell it, to pay the guy that they have to pay. And now the whole industry kind of starts to crumble. If you start to lock up the drug trade and the gun trade, all gangsters, not what you mean not all gangsters, literally all gangsters will be starved of power. That's all. You don't need Tozoso. You just need that. The gang members was safe in jail, now they're out and getting killed. I don't think anybody that has been killed thus far was one of the members that was one of the gangsters held inside of the SOE retention. They're going to feel it in their pockets. They won't do that. Of course, Ting. That can never happen. Well, is evidence room they busting? Huh? So who they locking up? Their colleagues? And that's the thing. You see what you say, that can never happen? That's why I don't take them seriously. I know all of the cocaine blocks are still functioning. I know they're still functioning. So then for you to tell me that you're aiming to make the criminals' lives a living hell, I don't buy it. Trinidad does not produce cocaine. We do not manufacture pew pew. Our government is in charge of allowing things in and out. What about the criminals in suits? G Nation says there are many criminals in suits. I agree, but you know, I kind of squint. What about white collar crime? I kind of squint at the people that upon complaints about violent crime and blue collar crime are quick to try and point out white collar crime and the criminals in suits and ties. The reality is violent crime is much more personally traumatic to the victims. Crime is not crime, G Nation. That is a lie. That is a lie. Crime is not crime. Ask a woman if she rathers the R word or to find out that her boss didn't pay her NIS. All crime is wrong. It's according to your definition of wrong. That might not even be true. It's according to what might be considered a crime. Crime is transgression of the law. And if the law is an unrighteous law, an immoral law, then the crime wouldn't be wrong. If it's a crime to free a slave, is that wrong? Like, no. So all crime isn't necessarily wrong. And there is a difference. There are levels. There are levels to it. And I don't like the idea, the dishonesty where when people talk about the violent crime, that what about the criminals in suits? You know, those white collar criminals are actually worse than the blue collar. I don't actually buy that. I don't buy that. That's a kind of, my favorite whipping post, that's a kind of Marxist supposition that, you know, the real criminals are the higher class, the bourgeois. They are the ones who are actually sucking the wealth from the system, and that's why there's lower level crime. It's that the criminals are poor, and the poverty is what drives blue collar crime. So the real people to look at are the white collar criminals. That's not totally true. It's not totally true. A lot of the blue collar criminals are real criminals. They are bad people that we need to get off of our street. Some of them are insane, psychopaths, really evil. They're not victims of the system. And you know, if you understand them, you will understand. No, they're bad people. Even the street gangs also answers to your boss. Fact. He does. Commissioner of Police Guevara under pressure. Protesters call for his head after fatal police shooting. Anger and grief erupted yesterday as friends, family and supporters demanded the resignations of Police Commissioner Alistair Guevara and Homeland Security Minister Roger Alexander. The calls followed a brazen police-involved shooting in St. Augustine that left Joshua Samaru dead and his common-law wife Kaya Sili critically injured and paralyzed. Pressure on the commissioner intensified after Guevara confirmed last Friday that he has no intention of stepping down, despite mounting public criticism over his handling of the incident. Yesterday, fewer than 100 protesters gathered outside at Woodford Square opposite Parliament to call for justice for Samaru and Silly. They called out riot police for them, apparently. They called out riot police as the protests unfolded yesterday afternoon. Riot police briefly deployed at Woodford Square. Emotions ran high when the riot squad appeared. A senior superintendent and an officer from the riot squad spoke with social activist Umar Abdullah, advising the group to disperse as the protests grew louder and more heated. While the murder was happening, Cardell says, yep, murder happening on Duncan, but riot police to harass protesters. Imagine that. And I found it very interesting, the clip that's been going viral, with the young lady quoting the law to the khaki suit senior officer who seems ignorant of the fact. Our police aren't getting a good showing of late, you know. They really aren't getting a good showing of late. Senior officers, fewer than 200 body cams working in TTPS. Less than 5%. Less than 5% of an estimated 6,500 police officers in the TTPS use body cams while on duty, said Deputy Commissioner of Police Junior Benjamin. In a sit-down interview with Guardian Media last week, Benjamin revealed that the service has about 190 active body-worn cameras. In a subsequent interview, Police Commissioner Alistair Guevara put that figure at 180 that were actually usable. During an interview on Friday, he said these had been distributed to frontline officers. He said 1,000 body cameras, which were purchased prior to him becoming commissioner, had been repurposed and were now being used to train police recruits at the Police Training Academy, St. James. A 1,000 body cams. Low trust in the police service. What shall we do with these 1,000 body cams? We'll send them to the barracks to use in training. Dwayne Gibbs, Stephen Williams, Gary, Griffith, Ula, or Alistair Guevara, rank them. Gibbs, Griffith, Ula, Williams, Guevara. Gibbs, Griffith, Williams, Ula, Guevara. Gibbs, Griffith, Williams, Ula, Guevara. That would be my order. Make it mandatory when police sign for a gun, he signs for a body cam too. I don't mind that idea. That's a wonderful idea. Would body cams serve any purpose? Yes, they would. Yes, they would. They would serve the same purpose as the CCTV footage served with the police shooting there. But what would have to come with body cams is legislation or policy demanding that full body cam footage be released within X time of an incident. So they're just watching man jump over a fence all the way to our money. Then they'll say battery's dead when something happened. Yeah, they might. Yeah, they might. Scotland, make an example out of them. Meanwhile, opposition MP Keith Scotland, who was a minister in the Ministry of National Security in the former government, said he still supports disciplinary action against officers who refuse to comply with body camera requirements. A chairman of the GSC on National Security Scotland in February 2024 had called on former police commissioner Earler to institute disciplinary action against them. Make an example and people will fall into line. And I agree. Because with clear footage, they're not taking accountability. That's not totally true. Bear in mind, this story that is in the news now, 8 police officers to face trial for murder, 2020 triple killing in Morvan. 8 police officers charged with a 2020 triple killing in Morvan, a case that triggered public outrage and protests in several Port-of-Spain communities, have been committed to stand trial for murder in the High Court. The committal was ordered on Friday following the conclusion of a sufficiency hearing before Master Margaret Sukraj Goswami, who ruled that the prosecution had presented enough evidence to require the officers to answer the charges before a judge and jury. So it's not just that there is no possibility of that. So like there is a truth in Trinidad where, okay, it seems like a lot of the police don't face consequences and it's difficult. But I also do believe that our judiciary is independent of our police service. The officers involved in the Moruga murder was also charged, yes. And the lady police officer changed her mind and recanted her testimony. But that wasn't a case of them being in video, which is what you said. Ting Ting, what you said was they're on video and nothing is coming of it. But that's not necessarily true. They weren't on video in the Moruga case. It was testimony from a lady police officer, a woman police constable, and she recanted. Now, I know that it's difficult, and there are many cases where the evidence for the police against the police seems to be very difficult to come by. But that's exactly the reason for things like a body cam. You don't need someone to stand and give testimony. If the battery dies in the body cams, then police should head back and hand over their firearms. I don't think the battery should be dying. The police is a gang, them function like a gang. Yes, they do function like a gang. That is true. That is true. There isn't a denial there from me. Justice C. Prasad, use cell phones, CCTV when dealing with police. Justice Frank C. Prasad says police interactions with citizens should be recorded using body cameras, CCTV, or cell phones. The court ruled in favor of TNT Defense Force Corporal Elton King in his claim against PC Marvin Burke. King was awarded $100,000 in damages, $75,000 aggravated and $25,000 exemplary. The judge accepted King's account of the April 15, 2020 incident and found no reasonable grounds to charge him inferring malice. C. Prasad criticized the TTPS's approach to accountability and urged urgent reforms to rebuild public trust. It's something like less than 10% or around 10% is the public sentiment about the police service. That is horrible. And in fact, I think that's something that makes the police service impossible to function. I think if a police service is as untrusted as our local police service is, it literally cannot do the job that it is designed for. And the judge spoke about, and it's not just here, but the judge spoke about the reality where it's difficult to get police to pay consequences personally. It's always basically charged to the state, not to the individual officers. I think something needs to be done about that. Now, I do think there should be protection for police officers where it's not necessarily that everything a police does should affect them personally in their personal life, because that will make it very difficult for police to actually make actions. But I think there should be a limit where over a certain level of finding being made, over a certain level of malice being found, it must be that officers face that consequence personally. It must be that they face it personally. Tape everything, the judge says. And I believe in this case, the police slapped the man's phone out his hand. But this is the point I'm making about our judiciary not necessarily being tied to our police as in the same entity. There are many lawsuits that win now against the police, and I think this is going to be more and more of a thing. I find reading the news daily, I am tending to see that Trinidad and Tobago is becoming more and more litigious. More and more people inside of Trinidad and Tobago are getting more and more comfortable using our court system for redress. So our police service, more and more, I think, would just be losing money for the country. That's where that's going. Things went out of hand with ICE police in the US, and people were advised to do the same. Use phones. Tape it all. Make sure you have the evidence so that they can't say otherwise when it happens. Totally unfair. Families cry relief, anger as SOE detainees walk free. Imagine that. 117 were to be released of the 151 that had been detained. Asked if she felt one of the family members of one of the detainees, asked if she felt the SOE was warranted and could be justified, she emphatically replied, "No, I think it was totally unfair. To the authorities," she said, "you disrupted hundreds of lives. This is just ridiculous. I wanted to be a police officer, and the only thing I didn't do was the final interview because I got my dream job." I think a lot of these people would have grounds for lawsuits. If you didn't even charge them, then why did you hold them? What's the evidence? And I think the legal system owes every one of these people a court hearing to show what was the justifiable evidence used to deprive them of their rights. If we have a just system, we are supposed to inform every single one of these people what was the reasonable cause, the evidence that was used to deprive them of their rights for this extended period of time. And I think in a just system, if there isn't reasonable evidence for that, you owe the men money. And women, you owe the people money. This one disturbs me. Mom detained for online post targeting Kamala says she learned her lesson. Olive Greenjack, who was detained for 81 days. 81 days under the SOE for her social media posts calling on Venezuela to attack the Prime Minister at her private residence in South Trinidad, says she has learned her lesson. If I had guidance, that statement would have never made social media, she said. She told the Sunday Guardian yesterday at her Petty Valley home shortly after her release from the women's prison in Aruca. It was her first time that the 44-year-old woman was imprisoned. She was one of the 117 detainees under the SOE who were released from prison between Friday and yesterday after the SOE came to an end on January 31st. Greenjack was not charged after her release. A detention order which was signed on November 12 stated that Greenjack made and published public posts and or comments on social media addressed to the Venezuelan government in an attempt to influence public opinion in a manner likely to be prejudicial to public safety. I would like that statement to be challenged in court. And I understand that all of these court cases, if they are challenged, if they are indeed challenged, that it's us to suffer, we are going to pay for it. I understand that. I know that. But I think for us to have a fair and a just system, those things need to happen. It cannot be that our leadership, who already seem to have authoritarian tendencies of late, can just lock someone up for 81 days because they feel insulted and slighted, and that just goes like that. That is insane. Mrs. Prasad Bisessa's home has been public knowledge for decades now. There have been news interviews done on the cabinet and government from her home. In those interviews, they announced the location that they're streaming from, where her home is. The location of Mrs. Prasad Bisessa's home was never a secret, and revelation of that does not increase anybody's risk. That's a lie. And I think this should not be allowed to stand. I don't think something like this should just be allowed to lay as is in Trinidad precedent. And okay, you might be a favorer of Mrs. Prasad Bisessa. How dare anybody insult the mother of the nation in your view? Okay, that's your view. But when another person comes in, are you sure that's the view you want? Because some of y'all said some really out of line things about Mr. Rowley and wished him some really out of line things and spoke even about his family. Are you sure you want the line to be that the government can call an SOE and lock you up for an undetermined length of time based on bad humor? Come on, man. Think about that for a bit. Think about it. Do we want that? Do we want a system where that is expected? I don't. I could tell you that. I do not. Abuse of power, Mitch says. I tend to agree. I tend to agree. Especially considering they couldn't find something to charge her with. And the initial reasoning given is one, not believable, and two, not really a crime. But we see that through it all, this government, they're trying to push through their views. They're trying to leave an impression on the governance style of Trinidad and Tobago. They're trying to make changes. We'll see if those changes stand. Here's another change that this present government is trying to make, an interesting one. Very interesting. I like to see where this one goes. The last time it was tried, it went nowhere, but they're going to try it again. Government to tax carnival artists. The government's move to impose taxes on local artists will be addressed by the Trinbago Unified Calypsonians organization after Carnival 2026. This commitment was given by TUCO's President Ainsley King during an interview with Guardian Media as the first attempt by the government to get stakeholders to pay taxes on monies earned for Carnival more than a decade ago had failed. On January 12th, the Inland Revenue Division of the Ministry of Finance advised promoters, band leaders, and local and foreign artists of their obligations to pay their required taxes during the 2026 Carnival season. The IRD also advised that it would conduct field visits to stakeholders to ensure their tax obligations are paid. In a statement, the IRD informed promoters that they are required to register for VAT, having earned gross receipts of $600,000 as of January 1st, 2023. They also have to pay income tax, corporation tax, green fund levy, and deduct and remit withholding tax for foreign artists, as well as submit returns. Similar taxes and submissions have also been imposed on band leaders. In the case of registering for VAT, where gross receipts of $600,000 is attained, no date was given for band leaders, while local artists would have to pay health surcharge, income tax, and submit returns. Foreign artists were informed that they would be liable for withholding tax deducted and remitted by promoters. We will have to face it, and then I know the concerns and discussions will start taking place, King said. He said it's an issue they can't avoid, which they would look into after the carnival season. If it's something that is going to become law, then we would have to make adjustments to deal with it. As soon as the carnival period passes and people's consciousness comes back, then they would deal with it. He said the taxes are being introduced when artists are engaged in nightly performances leading up to carnival, and they may not pay much attention to this latest development. At least two promoters, Randy Glasgow and George Singh, said they have been VAT registered for years and are compliant with the law. Nathan, you start using AI in your classes yet? The government implementing AI tutors soon. I have been using AI for a long time now. For quite some time I've been using AI in teaching. Now, I don't use it as a tutor, but there are many uses for AI. It's very useful. It's a tool, and you can use it to your benefit in all kind of different ways. Yes, Ronnie? What? Yes. To be honest, it's a business, so it can be justified. Lair says, yeah, it can be justified. It can be, but it's just a further highlight of the government's desperation for resources. Now, bear in mind, part of the reason that you would attempt to kind of allow that to run to some extent as you want is because the original nature of carnival is supposed to be that rebellious revelry tendency. It's not supposed to be about making money. So regularizing taxes around it makes it to be a firm commercial enterprise. The reality is, though, it has been a commercial enterprise for some time now. So the government may be seeking to do the reality of firming it up in that way. Now, here's the problem with that. The people who treat the festival as a commercial enterprise, they may benefit, or at least may not mind too much, some of these changes. But some of the true believers, if you will, some of the people who want to maintain that soul of carnival, that original idea behind carnival, they would be some of the people most hurt by this. because some of them are doing it for the love of it. After they get all the payment and then they buy all their stuff, who knows if they make money? They don't, because they didn't even keep that record so tight. So now, are they going to have to move away from their artwork to start to do up the books to make sure they have a record of how much money they made or didn't make, and then declare that so that they can pay taxes on it? Do you really think that's what they're going to do? Taxes a thief in the night. 3 band leaders, Leo Lacan, Ricky Davidson, and Morgana Beach, said these taxes came like a thief in the night. Davidson of WeMass International said sometime in 2011, the then People's Partnership government tried to implement taxes on band leaders, but it fell flat. He was interviewed by the Ministry of Finance concerning his earnings, but there were no follow-up discussions. In his 17 years of operation, Davidson never paid taxes on his band. You know, you can't pay taxes if you're making no money. The 100 people he expected to register in his small band this carnival have fallen short. Davidson had to cut his 6 sections to 5. Leader of Beach and Associates Kiddies Carnival Band, Morgana Beach, admitted to using recycled materials to produce costumes for 100 children. She salvaged lace that a large band wanted to dump to produce some of her sections. People are not buying. I would say 35% of the band is free, because we know a lot of people can't afford the costumes and want to enjoy carnival. She admitted the payments of taxes were worrying. Lacan said he had to absorb the increase in customs duties on alcohol for his masqueraders. He had budgeted one price for alcohol for his Entourage Productions band, but now it's costing him double. Calypsonian Michael Sugar Aloes Osuna said, this is the funniest one, when you reach a certain age, I don't think you just pay these things, taxes. Maybe that is for the younger ones. When I was younger, I used to pay it. After a certain while, you know, we old people, we don't deal up in that tax business. What is taxes? We don't do that when we reach a certain age, man. Devon Seal, who pays taxes and health surcharge as an employee, wanted to know if the imposition of this new tax applies to him as a Calypsonian. He wondered if he would have to pay 2 sets of health surcharge fees under the IRD advisory. It's a bit ambiguous, Seal said. Of the 7 stakeholders we interviewed, none were visited by IRD field officers. And I think that's one of the major problems with this. All right, you want to collect taxes from these people. Okay, some of them do make money. Some of them make a lot of money. How would you know? How would you know? The very nature of a lot of the carnival industry, is you aren't sure how much money is spent or generated in certain arenas and avenues. Everything in the carnival lineup doesn't have a receipt and a line in the accounting. Leandro Lewis said they should also start taxing churches, mosques, and temples because these institutions are generating. That is one of the most foolish ideas ever proposed anyway. So, we have religious institutions generating income that they could use to benefit their communities. But instead of that, we would take that from religious institutions and send it to politicians. For what? To hope that the politicians would help the same communities? Really? You trust, I don't know what religion you are, Leandro Lewis. Whichever religion you subscribe to, you trust a politician more than your religious leader? I mean, if you're a Marxist atheist, then your religion is the state, so your religious leaders are politicians, so then I would understand. But if you're any other religion, you subscribe to any other line of belief, you would trust politicians to help your community better than your religious institutions? I don't. Not all churches help their communities. Do all politicians, Leandro Lewis? What's your point? The competition here, the comparison, isn't between churches and perfection. It's between churches and politicians. You understand that, right? Okay, yes. Some large church institutions have been known for even child abuse. Here's what I'd urge you. Go check the record of child abuse in government institutions, and you'd recognize it's higher than the religious institutions. You aren't comparing the religious institutions to God himself came down and is running the government. Those aren't the two comparisons. So if you're saying not all churches help their communities, do all politicians? It's the propagandized view sold to us by politicians. It's really funny. We have been convinced by politicians that the solution for everything is to give the politician more money and power. How do we stop crime? We spend more money in national security and give the politicians a Zoso ability, more power. That's how we stop it. And if it doesn't work, because we keep spending more and more in national security, we keep giving the politicians more power, bail amendment bills, gang bills, this bill, that bill, they keep accumulating more power, but the crime keeps going up. And for no reason can somebody look out and see, okay, something seems counterintuitive in this. We keep giving them more, but the results get worse. And each time we give them more and the results get worse, they say what the solution is to give even more. And we buy this? You buy this? This nation is spending what? What was our last budget? How many $1 billion? Every year. And still there are so many problems. And you think what will solve those problems is if we take the money from the churches and religious institutions and give the government that is already spending 20+ billion, give them more money to spend more, and that's what will help. Like, what does a politician tell you to convince you of that folly? How can they convince you of something so foolish? Like, ask yourself that. Ask yourself, rewind in your mind, when did I start believing this? And what made me believe this? What gave me that impression that the politicians would be better at helping me? You know what's so funny about it too? All of the politicians and union leaders, etc., that really love to talk about helping the people, they are for the people, especially poor people. Listen, there's no more lucrative industry on this earth than helping poor people. If you want to get rich, go into the business of helping people and helping poor people. It's so strange. All of these politicians and unionists and different so magnanimous hearted people that go into the business of helping others and helping the poor, all of them strangely end up rich. Isn't God good? You're so rewarded for your selfless heart. Your selfless heart in your attempt to help people, that anytime you try to help people, it just magically makes you rich. So lucky. You become a politician. You're in debt. You owe money. But you become a politician because you have a heart that wants to help the people. And all of a sudden, after 10 years of politics, you're a multi-millionaire, decamillion, tens of millions of dollars in investments all over. Strange. Helping people was just so lucrative. And then some political sycophant, some person who buys into the propaganda, is going to come out here on the good internet and say we should tax churches, mosques, and temples to give them more money. I would ask every Muslim, do you trust your imam more than Mrs. Prasad Bisesa or Dr. Rowley? I would assume every single one of them would say yes. And the thing is, taxing a church, taxing a religious institution is a double tax on the people, because religious institutions get their money from donations from the people. If I want to donate to a church, it's not the government business to take my money that I donate to the church. I already pay taxes on my money, and with the remainder of my money, I decide to donate some money to my religious institution. And your genius idea now is to go in my religious institution and take some more of my money that I donated there. Come na man. So even with the tax on the carnival artists, which is what brought us to this discussion, can the government spend that money better than the artists? Like, okay, if a band makes 15 million, I'm calling a ridiculous number, but if a band makes 15 million for the season, do you think the government would spend that profit from the band better than the band would? You see, the idea of low taxes and no taxes is not that people don't want a country to run smoothly. The idea is that you believe that people will spend their own money to benefit these industries. We don't need the government to take the money to come back and spend the money to help us. We will spend the money ourselves. Would you prefer that we all decide to put together and build a school for our children, and then we put together and pay the teachers to educate our children directly? Or would you rather we pay the government, give the politicians the money, and the government then turns around and does all of that for us on our behalf? Francis Sylvester, the legend, says, "Good night, bro. They're just pushing the people of this country who love this country to leave." You have to have the ability to do that. Prepare for material adjustment, says Dr. Ralph Henry. The closure of bars and restaurants over the past few months has sharpened concerns about the direction of the economy, bringing into focus slower activity in the services sector and renewed anxiety about employment, public finances, and social stability. Economist Dr. Ralph Henry warned the country no longer has the resources to keep the economy ticking over in the way it might have done before, as lower energy prices and the declining production tighten the state's fiscal space. The point about it is that the economy has shrunk and there aren't the resources to keep it ticking over in the way it might have done before, Henry said. He pointed to the central role of government expenditure in supporting public services and a wide range of economic activity. When those resources are constrained, the effects ripple through communities. Here's a simple one. CPEP and URP. Listen, CPEP and URP spun a lot of money in the local economies. just about every cent paid to CPEP and URP workers would have been spent in relatively short time into the economy. Not saying that the CPEP and URP workers are necessarily spendthrifts and they love to spend and they don't know how to save. That's not necessarily my point. My point is, if you're paying cash transfers to lower class people, all of their needs must be met with that cash. So all of that cash is also quickly transferred back into the economy. By removing those jobs, you're removing that cash from spinning in that lower level economy. That's going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect. And the question is, where does that same money go now? Who do you send the money to instead? Because it's not like we're spending less money totally. It's the same amount or more. So it's not going to the CPEP and URP workers. Okay, where is it going? I'm curious to know. And I'm curious to see where this all leads. Contracts, Abdullah says. You says, if we're not taxing the churches and temples, let's stop give them bribe money through the IRO because they are not doing much with it. Who giving them bribe money through the IRO? I don't know which temples and churches you know, but I don't know many that get money from the IRO as a regular thing, eh? And if we're looking to stop payments to organizations in the country, I will look at other NGOs first, because they are not doing much with it. Are you a member of a church or a temple or anything like that to know what they are doing exactly with it? Are you sure? And as I said, if we don't give, or if we try to take the money from those institutions, the competition is the state. Do you think the state spends the money better than those religious institutions? I'd say I doubt it. HDC just changed their logo. Someone got paid. Abdullah, I always watch that. When signs go up, random signs, like last year, as soon as the government came into power, they put up hurricane season signs. Hurricane season signs that are still up right now. Road signs. Interesting. Somebody got a nice contract to do that. Who knows how much one sign costs would know that somebody got a nice contract to do all of that. Anytime you see the government doing something for you, just understand somebody's being paid to do that. Somebody is getting paid to do that. Yeah, the government give we free school lunch. They give us free school lunch. Somebody is getting paid a lot of money to do that. So, would you rather the government take our money, pay their friend to cook box lunch? Or would you rather the government not take that money from us, we keep that money and cook our own lunches? There's nothing such as free. There is nothing such as free. Those school lunch companies make a lot of money. And if you only know. Listen, look at the connections of the people that have those catering companies. Very often it's not like they were caterers from Adam. It's not like they come from a family of caterers. Very likely they come from a family of politicians. And that's how they got that catering job. And someone is going to tug on your bleeding soft heart and tell you that the children have to eat. Would you want to cancel food for the children? Oh my God. Where is your heart? The children need food. You would cancel food for the children as if it's about food for the children. As if it's about food for the children. Yeah, food for the children. By the way. Not necessarily, it's a very extensive criteria to get approval to make box lunch. Sydney, do you work or know someone who has a box lunch provision contract? And the person you know, if you know any, are they politically connected? Because I know of some too, and I do not know any that are not politically connected. Like, okay, I don't doubt that they do have some criteria. I don't doubt that they inspect, because I mean, our box lunch by and large doesn't give food poisoning to people's children on a regular basis. Our box lunch by and large isn't known to have sanitary problems by and large. So I don't doubt that they have standards. I do not doubt that. What I do doubt is that you could just jump up with a company and apply and get an even possibility, an even chance of winning such contracts. Thank you, Trini boy. I am waiting for Sydney's answer. I noticed Sydney didn't answer. Interesting. Nathan, I jumping out. Enjoy the rest of the night. I jumping out now too, Gail. I jumping out now. That's all I have for now, folks. The government can use the Environment Fund for much needed initiatives to provide financial relief. It's a tender process and you have to get chosen. Most definitely there is someone inside. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the companies are not good at all. I am saying that we know it's a connection thing. And if it's about being connected, then obviously it's not about the best company. Those two can't both be working at the same time. If it's about having a connection, then it literally is not about being the best company. What's that, Trini boy? You literally can't do the two at the same time. So anything with the government, you look at it with that light. When the government wants to do something else, you just wonder to yourself, who's getting paid to do this? Where is the money flowing to have this done? Yeah, Trini boy, I'm waiting on the one last thing you have to say there. Quincy over on Instagram, did they account for this when they shut down those agencies? I highly doubt they accounted for any of those things, sir. I highly doubt. Been paying Unimed for over 20 years and not in the system, I was told recently. Those box lunch contracts are on are an infinite money glitch. And you're not in the system? How does that happen? How does that happen, sir? I don't know what to say about that. Where's the money going and still coming out? Listen. Carney 1975 Limited was a government company, massive, employing lots of people. But when Carney shut down, it was revealed that the NIS payment for lots of their workers wasn't being paid. The interesting part is the NIS payments were being removed. So these workers on their pay slips saw that they were having deductions for NIS. But when the tatter hit the fan and they went looking for their NIS little reprieve, they found out your names aren't here. So for years, somebody inside of Carney was using the NIS money as a slush fund. And as far as I know, I don't think anyone was prosecuted for that. The man who did that, or the men who did that, may still be very rich central businessmen. Imagine that. It's crazy out here. People check up on your old stuff. Yes, definitely keep a check on your stuff. All right, folks, that's all I have for now. I hope you are educated, informed, and entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live Show. Hit us up at Mindful Education if you're looking for some private tutoring for most subjects. We start from elementary all the way up to Cape. Hit us up if you're interested. Until next time, people, like, share, make sure you subscribe if you're on YouTube. Make sure you're following otherwise. Laters, hold it on. I'm out. Peace. Let's say bye Instagram. Laters to IG. Laters Facebook.